Rebel with a cause. BK all day, baby. It's Rebel season. The real rebels are back. I got the mind of a king. You should really protect them. Everybody talking, but Rebel really the next. I got the mind of a king. Spread to never take this. Slavery, fake hip hop, you dead if you were racist. I got the mind of a king. You could never replace this. Blood from the mud, no love, so I'ma say I got the mind of a king. I know where I am from now. I'ma wake 'em up, you keep 'em sleep, it's up to me. I got the mind of a king.
Mwalimu Baruti.
Sir, what's up?
How you doing, Baba? How was your day?
I'm doing very good.
Salute.
I see three faces that I like.
That's right.
I don't like coming on programs seeing faces I don't like.
Appreciate that.
I see three faces that I like.
You familiar faces.
Yeah.
Well, welcome to Rebels Roundtable, where we get all the kings, the gods, the warriors together, and we just chop it up in a roundtable method, and we deal with the layers of the day.
I appreciate that. I haven't gone anywhere. Just wanted to make a quick adjustment here. Yeah. And it's an honor to be here. You know, seriously. It's casual conversations, Q&A. Like when you're doing a lecture, that's the best part of it. Anybody can sit down and read a book, but talking to folks and seeing what they know and what they don't know, and what they understand and what you can assist with, because you can't assist with everything. And for me, this is important, not because I'm getting older, which I am, and I have no problem with that. I don't feel
you're looking good.
I don't feel old.
Of course not.
Yeah, but to see those who are coming, and I need to find a better word than behind, us coming behind me and knowing that they are taking the stage in a positive way, because there are things I don't have to do anymore. I don't have to, accept every invite to every lecture or every program or what have you, because there are people who are out there, there are warriors who are out there saying what needs to be said. Some of them, as far as I'm concerned, in terms of being eloquent, articulating what needs to be said, they're better than me. And that's not, my ego not at work. Everybody's not good at everything. And, conversation with people, there are people who are better than that. Than I. For me, I think I'm pretty darn good at writing.
Right.
But Enia doesn't like to write, but she's the teacher I wish I had when I was in the 5th grade.
Exactly.
Yeah. So it's an honor to be here. I'm not just saying that just to be saying that. This is community. It's what we're supposed to do. I appreciate it.
We honored to have you here. Much respect.
Baba, I was joking before you came in. I said, he the reason I'm like I am. He gave me.
He said you responsible for him.
You're responsible for what what I am right now, and that's serious. You gave me the African substance. I always been kind of fiery, but you gave me the African substance.
So essentially, you trying to blow up my head to like about what, this size right here?
Just a little bit.
No, that's good to know. As well. I think over the years, over this 30 plus years now, going on 40 years, the most gratifying thing is to see people get something out of what you said or what you did and use it. Of course, that's the evidence in using it. But to know that, your work is not in vain, because I know some people's work is in vain. But to know that your work is not in vain and that people have taken it and they're not just mimicking you or imitating you or saying exactly what you said, that they've taken it to the next natural level. So, that's of course, music to my ears, as they used to say back whenever. That's good to know. I could sit here and talk for 3 hours on how warriors don't understand how much they contribute to the life of those of us who have been at it for a while. We call the seasoned warriors. They don't understand because many of them just see the flaws in their work. They just see what hasn't been done yet. They see not failure, but they see they don't see completeness in what they're doing. In order to do this work, you are already complete, but they don't see it because they're trying so hard. They're working so hard. And I can remember being frustrated day in and day out because it's like I've been talking forever and folks are still doing the same stupid stuff. Why am I talking or what's wrong with them or what's wrong with me? Maybe I'm just saying it wrong. But I think that's something that takes a lot of time. I think the warriors probably in their 30s, probably 40s, they have to recognize that their impact is slow, it's gradual. There's no timeline on it. There's no schedule into it. And you're probably not going to see the result of much of anything you do for another, 15, 20, 30 years. It doesn't happen like that. Because we're in such deep trouble.
Yeah. We talk about, and that's essentially it. Like, you wonder, like, what's going on? And, I did the Ewok course a while back. And one part that I always loved in that was when you talked about the aspect of cultural domination, of how Europeans, in order for them to thrive, they have to turn you into them. And essentially that's what we're looking at. And, I had a thought. I said, are we still, and I'm glad we got you on for this. I said, are we still in that form of cultural domination, or have we been culturally dominated?
Oh, I think for the majority of us, it's a done deal. And I don't think that's a defeated statement.
No, that's why I asked the question.
Yeah, you have to speak true. We sit up and put honey and whatever else we want on top of it, but for most of us, we're losing. But we're not losing. But for most of us, I should say they're losing. There was a ancestor now, Kobe KK Cambone, who was at FAMU. He was a serious student of us. And one of the things that he came up with was this model, which he called the cultural disorientation model. And he looked at that percentage of African people who are lost. Essentially, they can be found, but in all intents and purposes, unless something changes in the culture or opposition, they're going to get loster. And he looked at it 2 times over a different period of time, and the second time, he saw it was even worse than it was. And when I looked at what he had done, and I looked out, even though I didn't do the kind of science that he did, I said it looked even worse to me than it did before. I said, the good thing is, though, that there's a little blip on that end of that curve where you're having people who are moving away from anything European. That little blip is missed by so many because they're rushing into this madness. And I know I'm not even really close to the picture because I'm not young. Again, that's not an insult because I'm not young. So, and the way this culture has bred hatred, fear of elders, things that I hear about are extremely scary in terms of where we may be going. And those folks who are doing these things don't recognize that they're going to be older soon. We call that back in the day. I don't know if they still call it. We used to call it the arrogance of youth.
They still call it that.
Okay, and it's not that you're necessarily trying to hurt somebody. You just can't see anything other than your way, your interpretation. And this European culture promotes that, and our children don't see any way to success. They don't see any way to living. They don't see any way outside of this insanity. And it doesn't occur to them to even look in any other direction, which is a scary part for me because, of course, they're teaching their children, or they'll be teaching their children, and those children are going to be even worse. What I guess can make me smile sometimes is when I see or hear from a young person who is raising their children to be African. You know, of course, they're frustrated, and the children are on their nerves and all the rest of the stuff, because the children see that as prison and they're trying to run away from it as fast as they can. But that's like, you know, somebody's burning a torch somewhere. I can see that torch in the distance. In fact, I see a bunch of those torches in the distance. But that point of cultural domination, if they can't do that, then they can't control. But they have, how do you say? Well, not how do you say it? It's in any form of domination. Initially, it's going to be military. It's going to require a lot of money. It's going to require a lot of energy to be able to control those people. And in the process of controlling, of course, punishing them for things that they do that are them, and rewarding them for things that they do that are you. But it gets to a point where the financial piece, the energy piece, gets a little old, and you presumably, or hopefully, and in this case it has, at that point in time, what you have turned those people, tried to turn those people into, they have accepted. They have become vanquished. They believe that they were in a war with you. They believe that they lost, and they believe that they lost because they were wrong, that you are correct. So their job is now to become you to the best of their ability in every way possible. In fact, to surpass you at being you. And that's that cultural domination, when that cultural domination takes on a whole different darkness, because YURUGU doesn't need to be there to control you anymore. Doesn't even really have to send in the agents to destroy you anymore. Okay? The FBI doesn't have to be here, even though they are. The FBI doesn't have to be here because you believe in them more than the FBI believes in them. And you're going to bend over backwards. Every public school that I'm aware of, well, we can go even higher level. When EDI and I started at Morehouse in '91, we noticed a pattern. Every year that we were there, a professor who thought as an African was fired or forced out. Every year, not one pass. And then we looked nationally, we saw this as a trend nationally. So now you walk onto these campuses and you don't see anybody whose mind you recognize. And that, of course, has, I don't want to say trickle down, because it's easier to do that in the public school system because, the way that the control is there. They, of course, value their stuff more than college professors do. In the city of Atlanta, the average public teacher's salary is higher than the average professor's salary at Morehouse.
Wow.
You think the opposite because, you got all these degrees and all the rest of this good stuff. But it's lower than it is for public school teachers. So they're going to be more latched on, for those who don't already think that way. Those who they're going to be more loyal than the college professors, you would think. And not to beat a dead horse, but the removal of me from Morehouse and EDI's subsequent departure as a result of them applying a pressure against her because I wasn't there, a bunch of punks, because I wasn't there. Mm-hmm. This was the result of not one person or two people. This wasn't even the result of one college campus. Clark Atlanta, Spelman, and Morehouse were involved in this. So that to move with such readiness against somebody whose opinion you don't agree with at a liberal arts institution. Liberal meaning, of course, you're ready to take the whole, continuum of political thinking. You're ready because you think that your students are intelligent enough to see through lies and to tell right from wrong. That's like a black college campus not allowing a revolutionary African to speak on campus. Like the students are too stupid to be able to figure out whether this person is worth listening to or not. You know, those are things that are controlled for a reason. You know, to close that out, I'm very glad that we left. If the Negroes hadn't done what they did, Ackerman wouldn't be here. You know, we wouldn't be here if they hadn't paid me like they paid me. We wouldn't be here. Ackerman Institute would not have come into existence. And I also would not have seen, when I was at Morehouse, unlike at Chicago State, where I knew I was doing what I thought I was doing. At Morehouse, I thought I was doing something, if you will. You know, you get a case of the big head, people applaud you, they invite you to this, they invite you to that, they calling your name, you know, blah, blah, blah. You some of that stuff, you know, gets in there. But when you get out of that, when you step out of that, then you can see you weren't doing much of anything compared to what you thought you were doing. It's not a you know, make you feel bad. It's a wake up call. And I begin to look at that, not that I'm in any way, shape, form, fashion trying to compare myself with Malcolm X, my greatest hero. But Malcolm, the nation was something that Malcolm couldn't live with anymore. He had to adjust to that. He'd grown out of that. He'd grown out of the nation. And I said, I grew out of Morehouse. I didn't grow out of the students. I grew out of the college, out of the administration, out of the politics. And I couldn't hold it anymore. I spent a lot of time in classroom talking about the president of the college, talking about Negro politics. I didn't care about the curriculum. I didn't care about what the book said. I talked about what the students need to hear. Same thing I do here, except here in our community, I'm not talking to people who are trying to get a grade. I'm not talking to people who have to sit in the classroom in order to pass this course in order to get the degree. I'm talking to people who listen because they want to listen and they're looking for something in what you're saying. You know, it doesn't mean they're any less critical. In many cases, folks out here are more critical, but they're critical for a reason. They're not being critical just to be critical, not have an argument, just have an argument. They're trying to figure out what they're doing or saying right or wrong and how to move on that. So again, that comes full circle to this discussion right here, where this is indeed a honor and a reflection, because I wish I was where I was at when I was, you know, you all's age. That would I would be a lot further, you know, than I am now.
Already.
Yeah, and I still beat up on myself. I get into my funks, and I'll beat up on myself for that or that or that or that. But because we are African, we know that it's not just us.
Yeah. And you know, Baba, that's the thing, like, you know, is that like not knowing it's just us. Some of the things when I found like your lectures, I talk, because I always say to you, the first book that I read was the Effeminization. That was the first book I came across. And the Negroes know it. The Negroes know just, you know, it was this, and people know I call names on here. It was the YURUGU movement. And I posted just the cover of the book. Mm-hmm. And they had never said much to me. And they came to me exactly when they just saw the cover of your book. And they said, well, we would rather fight with 10 homos than some of these. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Well, I have nothing to do with it. But at that time, you know, and that's one of the vital books. That's one of the listeners, I would tell them that's one of the most vital books, because it wasn't much that you didn't cover in that. And then it was like, you know, I moved on to that, to a Sappho. And like when you would always say, one of the most profound statements that gave me clarity was when you was like, you embrace, when people say, call you crazy, tell them thank you. Mm-hmm. You know, because that's what a lot of the warriors go through. And like now I find myself in those footsteps in a sense where the younger brothers are coming to me and they're asking me questions. And they'll text me and ask me all these questions. And I'm like, you know, embrace it. You know, your family look at you like you're crazy. My family thought I was going crazy. You know, they was like, you know, they really thought I was losing my mind. But I was, in a sense, I was losing my Eurocentric mind. Yes. So I was crazy and I did lose my mind. Honey. But, you know, a lot of times that's what we need to lean on and promote, you know, elders like you to show that, you know, these words work, but it has to be taken and applied. You just can't read it for fun. And you know, that was one of the things. Like when I get something, I get it and I execute it. But yeah, that was kind of like some of the confident things of those books. And you know, even still to that day, I probably need another copy because that book is in pieces now. The Effeminization, that one, you know, I had to glue the pages back in. You know, but that's an indicator of you read it.
That's me with YURUGU.
Yeah.
YURUGU. It's rubber band, Elmer glued, a few other things.
Yeah.
Spit. No, man.
I think about that in terms of a lot of that stuff came out of me getting slapped in the face with reality. And I was actually in a class, got to get away from this Morehouse discussion because it just takes over everything. In a class at Morehouse, and I'm talking about Negroes, and these two students walked into the class, and they came to me and said quietly, "Baba, what was this guy's name? Madison Foster, who was a faculty in sociology department as well. Madison Foster called you psychotic." And I looked at him and I said, "Go back and tell him thank you." I said, because they need to understand that was from a Negro, that was the greatest compliment I could have ever received. You know, tell them thank you. And they need to know. And I'm glad that they're talking to you. I know they're talking to all of you all, but I'm glad that they're talking to you all looking for support. Because you all remember what it was like when this first started. I remember what it was like when I first started. There's nobody in my family. I had one uncle who was in the nation eons ago. His family, my family, essentially drove him to drink. Treated him so bad, you know, everything. I found out how rough my family could be. I had a Honda Civic SI, and my grandfather, my maternal grandfather, transitioned, and I go down to the funeral, and Enia is there with me, and Enia is pregnant. No, she wasn't. Yeah, she was pregnant, and you know, you line the cars up for the funeral procession, going to the cemetery and everything. And they came to me and said, "Well, you can't drive that car in the funeral procession because you have that license plate on the front with the red, black, and green in Africa in it."
Serious?
Yes. And I'm like, I'm smiling at him because I'm saying, is this real? I'm like, come on, man, this can't be real. This can't be real. You know, and I kept out of the procession. I didn't even go. I drove later to, you know, visit the headstone and all the rest of that. But I wasn't angry. I was just in disbelief.
Yeah.
Because not only don't you understand what I'm talking about, which is cool, but you want to disrespect what I'm talking about without knowing what I'm talking about. Or out of fear, because you know that if you support or agree or allow something, that you are affronting YURUGU. You know, nobody else but them, even if they're not around. So these warriors, these warriors in training, these up and coming warriors, these warriors who begin it, they need to know just how difficult it's going to be. But they also need to know that the difficult is going to make them even stronger than anybody else out here. You know, you go through more hell, then you're going to be, you know, stronger warrior. Not that that's something that's desired, but I think it hones, you know. I think it does make you, I think it makes you better. I think it makes you stronger. I think it allows you to test yourself just to see how good you are, just to see how strong you are. I think I could probably talk to most of the brothers I know who are my age, who are seasoned warriors, and they recognize the strength of it. And while they would say, yes, that made me so much stronger, they wouldn't wish that on anybody. You know, they wouldn't wish that degree of difficulty on everybody, especially when it comes to the family. I don't have anybody in my family who understands. Enia doesn't have anybody in her family who understands any of it. They don't, you know, she went to a wedding and in Florida, of course, I'm here. She went to a wedding in Florida, and they don't do that when I'm there. Because, well, they don't, you know, you say no brag, no fact. I'm not playing that.
Yeah.
You can do what you want to do, blah, 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 but you're not going to insult me. You're not going to disrespect me because you're the punk here. you sucking up, you talking about you're a man of God, but you afraid of other men.
Right.
You know, her whole family is in the church, deep in the church.
Right.
So they don't do that in my presence. They don't try that in my presence. But she's one of her nephews who was trying to get an idea about, you know, where she's at and what she thought. He asked her a question relative to one of her nephews who married a European, and she, you know, told our truth. And everybody in the family was, "Oh, you so racist, you so this, you so that, blah blah blah." Family, you know, this is family to me. What I'm looking at now, this is family to me. This is the most important family.
Right. Yeah. That's true. I say the same thing because, you know, when you speaking the truth, people look at you like you crazy. People look at you like you done something wrong because I love myself. You know what I mean? We don't love ourselves, Bob.
Back in the day, they used to say your family's the first people you lose when you get close.
Okay, I hadn't heard that. Okay.
They're gonna stay Christian. You could simplify it. They're gonna stay white Jesus Christian. You're gonna deal with the high science, and the divide is gonna come because they don't all come with us.
Right.
So it's a slippery slope. The gift is the curse. It's the curse of the talented. But if you just tuned in, we got the warrior author, the social scientist, Baba Baruti in the house. I just want to thank you in the beginning. I'm Rebel. Thanks for letting us pick your brain. I want a few quick synopsises on your books. I know you got over 25 written literature works. Am I got the right number?
27.
27.
27. And 3 workbooks.
A few powerful pages. A few. Break down a little synopsis on Message to the Warriors.
Believe it or not, Message to the Warriors, the time for that, there was a brother who came to me and he said, you know, I love your work, but young folks, they're not going to listen. So even he said something like Asafo, they're not going to read because of the endnotes, because of some of the technical language in there, et cetera, and they're not going to go to the glossary and find out. They're not going to go to the endnotes and find out. So he asked me to write a book to the young warriors. He said in the streets, but of course, you know, in the schools, wherever, because the schools are streets now. Yeah. And I sat down and he paid for the time for me to do that because I had to stop teaching. He asked me to do it in a certain time frame. And of course, this is a very personal request. I, of course, could have said no, but I looked at it as a challenge to be able to talk to young folks about what it means to be African without making them think that they have to do what I say. That was to me the priority. I did not want them to feel that I was banging their heads with my stuff, with this African stuff. I wanted them to see the logic of what it meant to be African. And in turn, of course, they see their own contradictions. You can't claim to be, you know, this and you doing that. So, you know, that's why I wrote the book, you know, Warriors Attire, you know, Warriors, you know, complementarity, Warriors language, Warriors, all the rest of this. So this is how a warrior who calls himself African is. Now you choose whether this is what you want to do or not, but don't say, you know, that being an African warrior is something different than this, because this isn't just coming from me. This is coming from the ancestors. They come from the people who I learned from, who I follow.
Right.
That's why I call you the general. Because you're the only one talking to the warriors. You got to be the general. Battle plan.
Battle plan was fun. I've been writing since I was about 8 or 9, letters to relatives, and I didn't know that's what I loved doing. But back then, if you called Ohio from DC, there was a charge per minute. Back then, you know, anywhere you called outside of your city, outside of your area code, there was a charge. So mom and dad weren't having that. So I wrote letters to nobody ever responded, but I wrote letters to all my cousins, aunts, uncles, everybody. And I found out that this was something I love to do. When I got into the military, I was in a rage for 4 years. They stuck me in North Dakota for 4 years. And I was afraid I wouldn't leave there because the cold would kill me. But I wrote poems.
I kind of want to back it up to the other statement, Baba, because that's an important statement that you just made. Because a lot of times, even with my peers, they'll kind of think it's me that's saying these things, or it's, no, this is not me. This is our lineage. This is our culture. This is our ancestors. And then two, a lot of times they feel like being African is an alternative. And a lot of times, like I said, we have like this shared culture. We share a culture with Europeans and everybody else who falls under the umbrella of American. But the importance, kind of talk about the importance of understanding, having this culture, a culture of our own, a culture of ourselves, not this aboriginal, we've been here before stuff.
We're supposed to be our ancestors.
Right.
And if we're ancestors, and we can't follow any part of a culture that is antagonistic to that is the opposite of that hates that tries to destroy that. I always give the example of the oracles of Ma'at, where Europeans have taken every single solitary one of them. Not taken it, that's the way they are. They have turned us against every single solitary one of them and have us glorifying having turned away from it. So if you've been turned away from the teaching, unless your ancestors were stupid, didn't know what they were talking about, just wrote down some crap because they didn't have anything else to do with their day. Unless you think your ancestors are stupid, then what they wrote, let's know what they said. It's reflected in the Proverbs. Okay? There aren't any Proverbs that reflect Eurocentric thinking. There aren't any Proverbs that don't make you think deeper. There aren't any Proverbs that don't promote you becoming a better person, having a clear identity as an African. I don't know of any. So if you are not following those proverbs, those writings, that way of thinking, then you're deviating from that. You can't, there's no such thing. There's no such thing as any society where two cultures are dominant. Right. One culture is always going to dominate. And everywhere Europeans are, to my knowledge, European cultures dominate, even when they're the minority. So everywhere you go on the African continent, except maybe quite a few of the rural areas, European culture dominates. And people want to say, well, that's no capitalism. You don't blame it on capitalism. Every people has an economy, but our economy, which comes back to your point, Brother Obasi, is that I love the way Amos Wilson said that your economy exists before currency. Economy is a set of relationships between the people that determines how that currency goes, what it's used for, how it's seen. There are wealthy people in Africa. What is Mansa Musa, according to them, was the richest man to ever walk the face of this planet. Ever. But what was the purpose of his money? What was the purpose of accumulating all of that quote unquote capital, which is a synonym for wealth? That's all. What was his purpose? His purpose was to increase the wealth of the people so that more could be done for them. That's a communal mentality. So European culture cannot embrace the basics of communalism because it's extremely individualistic. So you can't operate in the best interest of other people because there's no one more important than you. That doesn't mean that African people walked around and said, well, the community is more important than I am. And we're all like the Borg on Star Trek, where we don't have a mind of our own and all the rest of it. No, African people, in fact, the Khan are very individualistic. They understand the importance of competition and improving the quality of your skills. But they also understand in the context that the better my skills are, the better I can do something, then the better the community is going to be. That's cultural mentality. You can go from the nature of spirit in African people and the despiritualized nature of European people.
Right.
The spiritualized nature or the spiritual nature of African science versus the despiritualized nature of European science. The differences to me are so glaring, and they're, irreconcilably different. First time I heard that set of words, I said, oh, wow, okay, I love this. That means they're not compatible in any way, shape, form, or fashion. You can't mix them. You can't blend them. They cannot be brought together. One is going to dominate. And we have allowed the European mind to dominate what is thought to be African, to the point where we are trying to look to Africa to claim those things which are European as ours.
Yeah.
This homosexual drive to find homosexuality in traditional African society. And there's no evidence, but you can manufacture it, because in European society, lying is part and parcel of the culture. That's not part and parcel of it. How are you going to have communalism with liars? Okay, communalism requires that people be honest with each other, to do for each other. If I know that you're lying to me or stealing from me, then I'm not going to be helping you. I'm not going to be trusting you. Okay, you're a liar and a thief. So this cultural difference, Obasi, this is like major. This is like at the heart of the matter. Of course, the asili, that thing Mama Rima talks about, where you talk about the spiritual essence of African people, that's even deeper than culture, because culture comes out of the asili. Mythology, the mythology of African people, your mythology reflects you. Mythology doesn't come first and then you see it and write down about it. Mythology is a creation of your mind, where you're trying to explain who you are in the universe, explain your power, explain your priorities. And European mythology, Greek Roman mythology of course, it stole the names, it stole the powers of African gods and goddesses, but it put that European slant on it. People forget when they don't tell the whole story. Parts of it are missing for a reason. Like when Socrates went to study in Africa and wasn't even able to make it halfway up in terms of the degrees that were required to become a full-fledged master. And he returns to Greece, Rome. What did he come? He's Greece, whatever. He returned to Europe, because Greece and Rome are proto-European countries, proto-European nations. When he returned, he brought back this African stuff with him, because he could see the spirit in what it meant to be African. That wasn't him, but he could see it, and he recognized that was better, that was far superior than what they had done. And they found out what he was trying to do. They were listening to what they were saying. No, that's not us. You can't bring that in here. Socrates wouldn't stop. So he was given an option. We kill you, or you kill yourself, because you're not going to be talking that nonsense here. And when Plato and Aristotle followed him, Plato and Aristotle knew. They learned the hard way. They saw. Well, they didn't learn the hard way. They learned the soft way. They saw what happens when you bring that African stuff into European society, when you bring that African culture into European society. So they went and assisted in the process of destroying that which is African, and stealing that which is African, and claiming it as their own. This cultural thing, we could talk about this for hours. If you just looked at how my generation, my parents' generation were. We're talking about people who were born at the beginning of the Great Depression in this country, and how they treated each other 60, 70 years ago, how they responded to crisis 60, 70 years ago, how they were so deeply connected to spirit 50, 60 years ago, how they valued education for the sake of education 50, 60, 70 years ago, and how you can connect that with being African, and how that was watered down because of dealing with these freaks for 400 or 500 years, or depending upon what you're talking about, a few thousand years. So all that is culture. The value, you look at Ghana, Mali, Songhai, the value of education, where people were paying for books then, the prices like people are paying for Nikes today. Yeah, that's a major flip. We're doing the time and after our enslavement, where African people would pay for somebody to get through high school so they could come back and teach their children, and they would come together as a community, and that person would get a house. They would build a house for that person. And if there was a mechanic there, that mechanic would get that person a car and make sure it was running. And when that person ate at a different house every night to make sure they were fed, and children bringing them food in the morning, because we valued education so much. And now we have children with the best equipment and the most non-thinking minds. And it's not their fault. That's the fault of a community at work.
It's a perfect leadway into mental side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Explain menticide to us.
Menticide, the most important thing about menticide for me, even though of course I think that the essays are each important, the most important thing to me about menticide is the name of the book. We have lost revolutionary language. Some of the words that were so profound. Bobby Wright coined that word menticide. I wanted to bring that back.
Yeah.
Make people familiar with the word again. And now I'm hearing it, but people had forgotten. They hadn't forgotten about Bobby E. Wright, but it wasn't like in their face. So I wanted them to see menticide, see that word, menticide, and then start thinking about what exactly does it mean, because the meaning hasn't changed. It's got worse. The meaning hasn't changed. So the essays in there, I need to pull this out real quick because I know there were 2 or 3 in here. The Hunt is On about the prison system. It was a gender confused voice of African manhood, which is about Naeem Akbar. And then put his name in there, and there are reasons why. You have to be very careful in this Negro's world. And I don't care what you've written for us. I don't care how good you are. And I've read his stuff, read everything that he's written that's been published. Okay?
Exactly.
But I don't have any respect for him as an individual.
Exactly.
Because of what he's doing and what he's promoting.
I kind of feel like that about Molefi Asante. I'm not a
his son being this black man who's the father, quote unquote, father of Afrocentricity, which John Henry Clark, of course, corrected him on, sends his son to a all-white school all the way through.
Who's the guy
pushing for this?
Who's this?
Molefi Kete Asante.
Yeah.
Sent his son to all white schools all the way through, and this is the father of Afrocentricity. In his last book, he's talking about being homophobic. I'll never read anything else by him. I've read everything up to that point, just like with Hakeem Matabuti. And I worked with his wife in Chicago. I worked with his wife on a Bethune-Cookman, a Bethune grant where we were trying to educate African women who were below the poverty line about the importance of getting their children to school and helping them with their children with their homework. Our daughter went to his school, New Concept Development Center. And I used his book as required reading for my first 7 years at Morehouse in 2 of my different classes. And then he comes out with, I forgot the name of the book now. Claiming Earth. And I open up, I run to the store. I want to get there first. I want to get a hardback because the hardback's going to last. I run to the store, I get a copy, and I bring it home, and I'm thumbing through it, and I get to the middle and it says, white people are people too.
Yeah.
I'm like, what? Is this what's going to happen to me when I get older? That instantly became a concern for me because I've seen a lot of that. I'm saying, is this what's going to happen to me? When I get older, I'm going to forget. I'm going to start loving people who have destroyed us.
No, I think we would know you are cloned or something. If you start talking like that, I think I had to come knock on your door and do a wellness check because it ain't Bob, something wrong.
No, yeah, I'm gone. I'm gone. I'm off the deep.
Baba, my mother used to teach night classes at Chicago State University.
Oh wow!
Yeah, she would have been. She passed to transition. So I'm 51. She would have been 73 now. Yeah, her name is Parisine Moore.
Okay, what do you remember? Well, yeah, because that name isn't ringing a bell during the time I was there.
Okay,
but Chicago State was my best experience in education because. The honesty of the students. And they wanted to know, and they weren't afraid to tell you when they didn't understand. And they wanted to know what we said. They wanted to know what Black folks had said, what Black folks had done and hadn't done. Everybody in my classes, I think out of all those years, I had 2 male students. So, in classes of 25, 30 students, it was all women. And all of them are old enough, except maybe 1 or 2, to be like an aunt to me.
Mm-hmm.
And they were listening. They were there because they were, trying to either get a promotion at work or this was something that they had not completed when they were younger, and finally the children were out of the home and they were able to, go back and do what have you. That was the most beautiful education experience in academia that I've ever had. And they loved you. That was Chicago State was what made me decide to teach. Up until that point, if you had told me I was going to be a teacher, I'd have probably been laughing for like the next 3 or 4 days. There was nothing about that attracted me in any way, shape, form, or fashion, but I was there. Eni came to the class one day before she started teaching in Chicago State, and she said, they love you. She said, they listen. And then I started paying attention. Oh, well, they do. They actually do. So apparently what I'm saying is getting across. And that's where I started. Long story short, because I know we need to get to these books and stuff, but that's where I started putting the quotes and proverbs on the board at the beginning of class, because I noticed that we knew white folks' quotes and proverbs and saying we didn't know anything from ours. And when I started putting the quotes and proverbs on the board, it was like quiet thinking time. You might spend the entire hour and a half, and they're talking about that one proverb and what it means in our community and their experiences. And, and I was in awe, because these women were old enough to be, aunts to me. And you respect your elders. At least that's the way I was brought up. You respect your elders. And of course, what came out of their mouths made me respect even more. I wanted to just say something real quick about one more essay in here, Groundings with My Daughters, which started out as like a very short article in a magazine that got started here in Atlanta a number of years ago called Black Girl Magazine. This very young lady was doing this magazine for her girlfriends. She asked me to do an article for it, and I did a short thing in there, and it was mainly geared toward girls who grew up without fathers in their homes, and to tell them how important you are, what you came from, and that expanded into this at Enia's request. She kept saying they need to hear from a man. They hear from women all the time. They need to hear from a man. They need to hear from a man. And there are two things, I guess, about my writing. That essay has been the most read essay of all the ones. I've received more comments back for that. I've even sent out copies of it. This group of sisters asked me to post it on my page years ago, and it blew up. So that one I'm really proud of. I started one on entitled Groundings with my sons. I haven't finished that yet. But that one and the first one that you talked about, Obasi, homosexuality and feminization of African males, really surprised me, because I thought that would scare people. I thought that would anger people. And I know it's angered people, but that's, their problem. That book took 9 years to write. And I didn't, I was really writing it for me because I needed clarity, because I was angry because all these quote unquote scholars talking about homosexuality had African origins. That ticked me off inside. I had no evidence. I said, okay, well, let me find some evidence. That book was written as a result of that more than anything else. This guy named, I call him Danielle, even though it's Daniel Black, who is like the most important professor at Clark Atlanta now. And he had this rites of passage program for homosexual males. And he also had females in there of many of that persuasion. And somebody questioned him about having a rites of passage program for the females instead of just the males. He said, well, I'm so in touch with my male and female side that I can do both. He had these boys in there wrestling with each other in a not masculine way. There's all kinds of mess that was going on in there, and it's still going on in there. And he's the most popular professor at Clark Atlanta, really the most powerful professor at Clark Atlanta now. He came to my office one day and asked me about something I said in class about homosexualized males. And I said, you're Daniel Black, right? And he said, yeah. I said, and you have homosexual males in your rites of passage program, right? He said, yeah. I said, bye. That was the end of our discussion. I don't have anything to say to you because it's like, now you're going to try to convince me. That's not happening. Not here. But, oh shoot, I forgot. Oh, but the point I was going to make, Obasi, what surprised me about this book, because it scared me. I assumed that the title would scare people away, and I assumed that the thickness of the book would scare people away. It sold more than any other book I've written, and it was one of the earlier ones.
Those were the things that actually drew me in and intrigued me. I found it on the sisters page. I found it on the females page.
Oh, wow.
And the title caught me, and I was like, And I looked. I'd never heard of you. And I looked, and I found it on Amazon, and I bought a copy. And I think I started reading the first chapter, and I was hooked. And I finished that in like 7-8 months.
Well, the reason why it's titled that way is because also at that time, the homosexual and the promosexual community, what they will do is they will find something in what you say and create an issue out of that. Yep. Like this one brother, he said, well, I don't know what it means to be African. I can't talk about what Africans is because I wasn't born in Africa. Well, Romani wasn't born in Africa. John Henry Clark wasn't born in Africa. All these other folks weren't born in Africa, so they don't know what it means to be African either. But they'll start making that statement and be the people who want to be homos or homo friendly. Then they suck into that argument because that's what they need. I titled homosexuality and the feminization of African males, even though I would have titled something else more true, because they were trying to say that all homosexuals are not effeminate. So therefore, you can't put them all into this category. So I included both of those in the title to make sure that there was no confusion, even though I do say in the book somewhere to your effeminate males or your homosexuals are effeminate. But I didn't want to make a blanket statement because then he could dismiss the whole book just based upon the title, even though they have worked diligently to do that. And what they have done here as a result of that, when the book came out, all my requests for radio interviews stopped. Stopped completely in the city of Atlanta. And in fact, for a while, all of the invites stopped. And I wasn't impressed. We had Akabin, we had, 20 some students, and I was overwhelmed here. But I really noticed that. I found that very surprising in terms of the politics in this city, which I know are national, but the politics in this city in terms of anybody even thinking to say anything about homosexuals in this. When we first came to Atlanta, there were a number of ministers who were saying homosexuality is, not good, blah, 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 blah. I don't know if any now.
But some of the things that kind of cleared up, and I credit you partly and Mama Marimba the rest with showing me culturally who I am and really cleaning up my cultural lens. But what that book did for me was to show me their mythos, that when you talked about like Zeus and Ganymede, never heard it. When you talked about like Zeus and Ganymede and understanding that when I would read our stuff and I would read our mythos, and we didn't talk about nothing like this. But then when you read theirs, and it's like, and then I mess around and read Plato's Symposium, and that really just was like, so all these people simultaneously like,
And the thing with Jupiter and the moons was that I stumbled upon that by accident.
Yeah.
I'm telling the students, I'm going through astronomy and say, Jupiter has 3 moons and blah, blah, blah. And this little smart Alex student, he says, no, they have 4. And I'm saying, you're going to correct me on this. I'm teaching this class, right? But I didn't say anything. I went and looked just so I could show him he was wrong. Sure enough, 4 moons. That's what started me to dig because I recognized one of the names. And then I looked at it further, of course. So why is the homosexual earthling getting named for the biggest moon? And I, of course, I recognized way before that time that mythology comes out of who you are. Right. So the stuff, a lot of the stuff that I came across was stuff that's in our face. We just don't know it. You go back and look at our old shows, Sanford and Sons, moving on, all of these old soul comedies, there is stuff in there.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, right.
Yes. But at the time, we had no idea. We didn't know. Okay, we're laughing with the laugh track. Because it's, whatever, it seems funny or supposed to be funny, so you better be laughing. But we had no idea when they would allude to this or say something about that. We had no idea what they were talking about. And it really clicked hard for me when she said one day, yeah, they'll have us laughing at stuff, that we're going to be crying about one day. And today we're laughing. I mean, we're still laughing. We don't realize the impact of that, what that's going to be like in another social science history. Our story is supposed to, as Chancellor Williams said, it's supposed to be a tool that allows us to predict, to forecast what is coming. I tell the students all the time, you're supposed to be studying history, not because you love history, but so that you can tell what's coming, because you're supposed to be ruling this bad boy. So if you understand that, then you know what's coming. So if I'm telling you that this is what was going on in the homosexual community up till now, and that we were laughing like this, what are you all doing now? And look at what has changed over that time. What is it going to be in another 20 years? Okay. If girls are going into the locker room and they're talking about their quote unquote compliments, and they get on the case of some girl who says that she likes a boy, where's that going to be in another 20 years, another 10 years? So we get caught up so much in, and it's important to know what's going on now, but we get so much caught up in this, we can't plan for what's coming. The Europeans have planned for this. They set this mess in motion. They knew where it was going. We're in school now. And they're the teachers. And we're barely in the third, fourth, fifth grade in terms of their perversions and insanities. In writing the sex imperative, I read 4 dictionaries of sex. Never heard of before then. One of them is like that. And
you told me to get one, and I got one, and my mind was blown when I read.
It's serious. It's serious. What they do, and every entry in there is something that is not so abnormal that can be dismissed. That means that if it's included in that book, there are participants in this and have been for, since they came into existence, as far as I'm concerned. Light Africa talks about visiting a cave that's now concreted up, where there are pictures of bestiality and all the rest of this mess on the walls of the caves, carved into the walls of the caves. These are their caves in France.
No, but Baba, I was looking at because I like to watch certain stuff. So I was watching Strange Addictions. It was the first time it's a TV show that's called Strange Addictions.
Okay.
And it was a term called mechophiles. And it was a mechophile. And it was Europeans that they love having sex with mechanics. And there was this one YURUGU, and he was bragging about, but he was like, he had sex with Airwolf, he done had sex with Herbie the Love Bug, and he was sticking his, you know what, in the exhaust pipe car. And I was like, what in the, when you just understand their train of thought, who would think of that? Them, but who would think of that?
And we don't think about the culture that makes that normal and natural that we have adopted. That's the part that is missing from a lot of the dialogue, because people don't understand culture. But that's a main part. It's a mentality that comes out of. It's not that act that's the problem, which of course it is a problem, but it's not the act. It's not the act that's the problem. It's the cultural frame of reference, the way that you think out of that culture that makes that something that you would do, something that you would even consider, doing, something that you would think about doing, the possibility, anything, anybody, anywhere, whatever. It doesn't make a difference. That's a cultural thing. And in cultural insatiability, where you can never be satisfied, you must consistently, constantly, always look for something new and different to do whatever to. That's a cultural mentality. That goes back to that myth of YURUGU, where what did it say? And when folks read that introduction in YURUGU, which is the myth of YURUGU, and I'll go back over it with people, and there are like 4 or 5 words that people really need to focus attention on. She said they will never. Okay, it's not like they can change, blah, blah, blah. No, that myth indicates that this is becoming normal is an impossibility for YURUGU. It's an impossibility. And folks will read that myth, but they will skip right over those absolute words. Can never, will not ever. You know, those words are right in there. To me, that's a study group in and of itself. Just that one little page. That's the myth. We forget that, and we don't understand how the impact of being in this despiritualized, materialistic, sadistic culture make us. I mean, when the number of children who are raped in our homes, this is not new, but the magnitude of it is very new. It's very new. Okay, in the neighborhood I grew up in, I'm serious. In the neighborhood I grew up in, I knew one man who abused his wife. I didn't find out about that until I was grown. These brothers would take you out behind the garage with 4x4s, and you have an option when they get finished. You either stop what you're doing or you leave town. Because they weren't having that in their community because they understood where that could spread, or how that could spread. We don't understand, I say we don't understand the power of culture.
Yes, sir.
And how it leads us to rationalize insanities. And we serve as the model, if you will, of Africans around this planet. We serve as a model of behavior of Africans around the planet. And we're superior at imitating the European.
Right.
Nobody in this circle right here, but we are the masters at that.
Right.
We don't go and ask, we study, and then we surpass it like children surpass their parents.
Fact.
We are very good at being them, and everything. You can't look at somebody or a group of people as superior and then pick and choose what you're going to imitate from them. You want that power, so you imitate everything on the assumption that all of those things are what gives them power. So now our children have the definition of power as being able to rule over other people. Jacob Carruthers talked about that in intellectual warfare, where for Europeans, work is defined as your ability to make other people do the work for you. That's when you're working. So if you're not having people do your work for you, then you're not really working. You're a chump. And our children see it the same way. When you want to look at, I forget what I talked about. I think it's sex imperative. There used to be this program came on called 60 Minutes, and the only black person on there was Ed Bradley. Ed Bradley is sleeping with the enemy.
Yeah.
But they did a one of their episodes was about visiting traditional European society, old Europe in Europe, and they went to these small towns, and there was one in particular that they focused on. They spent most of their time there. And I'm sitting thinking, where you are at your purest is going to be how you act or how you are in your most rural, most untouched places. And he said the people walked around, they were sullen, they kept their heads down, they always frowned, nobody smiled, they didn't speak to each other. I said, that's Europeans. And then let's convince something else is different, a monochrome society. You look at the pictures of old Europe, everything's black and white. You look at the pictures drawn or painted of African people, all you see is color.
Yeah.
That speaks to a cultural mentality. That speaks to a worldview that interprets, what do you say? For Europeans, it interprets reality and other people as things to be feared, hated, and destroyed. Everywhere you go, I tell warriors now, you meet up with a European, the first thing they want to know, friend or foe. That's what the whole conversation about. That's what the whole icon about. I want to know if you're friend or foe.
Yeah.
So then I know how to use you. And our children are following that path. I love Tupac. And I didn't, I'm not a hip hop person. I was born like before that. Hip hop was in New York when I was becoming grown. So I never got that introduction. I never became acquainted with that. A lot of family there, but it didn't hit DC until after I was gone. But what I heard from Tupac, I like. But one of the things that he did that disturbed me, but I think I understand why, was him bringing Machiavelli into the discussion. And most of the children, most of the young folk didn't know who Machiavelli was. They hadn't read The Prince. They hadn't read that mentality, but leading them in that direction because they listened to him, not necessarily thinking about, but listening to him, they saw that as the correct way we're supposed to be. So you had then, not as a result of, directly as a result of Tupac, you had this whole generation of hustlers who were not about the business of being responsible to the community. This is different. I think I'm a hustler. In this new sense, back in the day when I was young, you call somebody a hustler, that meant that person was a thug. And I mean a thug, cut your throat and look back at you, smile, and keep on going. Not because you touched his shoes, but because you looked at his mustache funny. So you had this adding into that, which moved people away from a love of community, a love of family. So that Machiavelli stuff, whenever I'm talking to young folk, get you a copy of Machiavelli, get you a copy of the Prince, and get you a copy of the Teachings of Ptahhotep. Read the Teachings of Ptahhotep first, and then go read Machiavelli. And you'll see clear cultural differences, fundamental cultural differences on how those who rule, those who are responsible for the safety of the community, how they think. How they think. And to me, that's so scary for us because so many of us have adopted that mentality now.
Yes.
And adopting that mentality, you can't be African.
Oh.
Yeah. And what it looks like now, what the 2021 Malefe Asante looks like is these generation of like Google babies, or the ones that we had an idiot on a few weeks ago, and they are totally siding with the enemy on this vaccine, but their stance is it come out of Africa, and we had people that were inoculating then, but they are not even because they don't understand culture and everything is science, and then too, this is gonna make you laugh over that. He's a quote unquote African atheist, but you don't understand the political intent of your enemy. Mm-hmm. You don't understand that this is not the same one that from back in that day. This enemy has a whole different intent that you don't understand. And so them not, a lot of times with that, because I came up in that Tupac generation. Tupac was like, I always say Tupac was the first, before I knew anything about Malcolm, before I knew anything about anybody, Garvey, Tupac was the first, black male that put that message in me. But what they didn't understand, what he didn't teach clearly to me was who my enemy was. So I think that's why we have to be distinct about what our enemy is, and it's not going to change. I don't care what he bring you, you always have to question it.
And all those individuals and organizations which you talked about, they're not trying to be African.
Right.
They're just trying to get their slice of the European pie, which is something Amos Wilson warned us about. We're not supposed to be trying to get some. We're supposed to be bringing these people to the heel.
Yeah.
But they're not, and I don't. I hear them, but I don't listen to them because they don't understand that everything must be understood in cultural context.
Cultural context.
They're not trying to do that because they're not trying to be African. They wear some of the trappings of being African, or they use African lingo or whatever words here and there, but they're not trying to be African. And the only reason that they're doing the African thing, if you will, is because the white folks won't accept them as equals. They have a choice. Just like you had some faculty, I might even say more than some faculty at the colleges I've been at and I've taught at, they were there not because they want to teach African students, they want to teach Black children. They were there because they couldn't get into the white schools.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just like the folks who were stealing money from the HBCUs left and right. There was a vice president for academic affairs walked away from Morehouse with 1.2 million. He got a job at another HBCU. Nothing happened to him. And I thought about it as his last name was Crawford, was just like my line, Crawford. And in fact, well, that's irrelevant. I said as he was leaving that the reason he was at Morehouse was because the historically white college universities, that's the white boys' turf. That's where the real money is, but that's the white boys' turf. And the white boys were not going to allow him to do that in their turf, on their turf. So he had to come here to be able to do that. So a lot of these folks, they have no interest in being African. It's just a convenient tool right now. It's a convenient route right now to be able to exploit, to be able to be in a position. And most of what comes out of their mouth, and that's what makes it so that for me, well, I've never really been, I've been an arguer or debater to some degree, but I never liked it because my temper is too
right. Right.
Takes over too easy, and I'm howling and screaming at whoever it is, and it didn't call for that.
Yeah, you know, me and the boss, call them Hotep hustlers, Baba. Hotep hustlers.
It's ridiculous that we have to identify them, but because the majority don't know.
Yeah.
And you can craft your lies so easily.
Yeah.
But you know, Baba, Andrew Hacker talked about that in Two Nations about the quote unquote honorary white and how this honorary white, I don't care what you do, you're never gonna really be. And he made it clear. Mm-hmm. He made it clear in his stance of you can never be us, boy. I don't care what you do.
Absolutely.
And they're not understanding that. Because like you said, they're not trying to be African. They're just trying to get their slice, or they're just trying to get the biggest view. And their intentions is to be as disruptive. They're not here to spread knowledge. And this is what we have to clear up, because a lot of people think that they are knowledge and they dropping knowledge. No, they're not. They are, I call them agents of chaos. Mm-hmm. They're agents of chaos, and that's what they're hell bent on, spreading chaos. But Andrew Hacker, and that was some of the things, like it was like every book you were saying, read, Baba, I was knocking them down so much. To my mom was like, why are you ordering so many books? And I said, well, no, I'm not gonna order no books. She said, boy, who you lying to? You know yourself, you know. But reading saved your life, and that's one of my hashtags. Reading saved my life. Mm-hmm. You know, and we have to be clear about what it is we reading and doing.
Mm-hmm. The sad part for me about these clowns, that's the best I can do sometimes. Okay. That part of me for these clowns is that it says something about the mentality of the following. So you got a collection of escapists who are looking for anything but something that leads them toward being African. So they're going to jump on any bandwagon. And you can't refute lies when you're talking to the followers of a liar.
Right.
Okay. So if I'm a liar and I got 30,000 people following me and paying me and all the rest of this, you can come in and say what you want to say. They will defend you just like they'll defend the minister who just raped one of the congregants.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
So to me, that says a lot about they're opportunists, of course, but that says to me a lot about the following, where it almost says more to me about the following than them, in the sense that most of the following is not completely ignorant. They say people come to a debate not because they want to hear two different sides. They want to hear what they already believe validated. They want to hear proof for what they already believe. They're not coming. They of course they're coming for the entertainment, but they want to hear what they already believe validated, not because they want to change their mind or they want to think better. So when we're talking about these people who are following clowns, we're talking about people who possibly, and in many cases, do believe what he's saying more than they do. We can't when George Wallace who I know you all know, racist governor, dead guy in Alabama. And my family's from Alabama. I came, well, when George Wallace made that statement in front of University of Alabama, wherever it was, about, integration never, people were upset about it, blah, blah, blah. And, he said this. I said, no, they said that. Because if he said that and it was against what the white crowd agreed with, he wouldn't have been governor. He wouldn't have been mayor, governor the next day.
Right.
They just took his behind out quick.
Yeah.
So we have to, when we're making these honest assessments of clowns, you also have to incorporate, the honest assessment of many in the listening audience who will defend them to the death.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I said, yeah, that's correct. But you know what? They reaching a lot of like young people that don't know no better, Baba.
Mm-hmm. And you can't. That's one of the things that warriors will beat themselves up over. I beat myself over that when I left Atlanta University Center, because there were so many students who I couldn't make understand because they weren't in my classes. And some of them came to the classes, they were already convinced that Daniel Black was God, whatever. Warriors beat up on themselves often over things that they cannot control. You can't make anybody African. You can't make anybody listen. You can't make anybody understand. But you need to be doing the work that you're doing so they can see it. So those who have the sense, those who aren't clowns, because otherwise, if you're not doing what you're doing, I'm not doing, folks not doing what they're doing, then they're not going to have, a light tower to see. They're not going to know where to go. And many of them, because they're not that strong at that point, they'll turn around and go back. Because this doesn't make any sense, because there's nobody modeling what it's supposed to be like.
So like with you, Baba, question. Because with me, one of the books that really, outside of yours, one of the books that really say, this is the book that slowly got me off of being an integration. And it was Medical Apartheid by Harriet Washington. Because at that time, Baba, I didn't understand the level of brutality that the Europeans were capable of. I had no clue, because I'm thinking, I don't have a sense of culture, so I'm thinking, everybody's everybody. But what was one of the books that you could name that really turns the light on or turns your life around?
Dale Jones' Black Holocaust. I went to sitting in his sister's house, going to a wedding reception. She had it sitting on the coffee table. I didn't make it to the wedding reception. And I finished that book. YURUGU, which of course takes it, to a whole nother level. All these books, kind of have stories. I tried to read YURUGU one summer. I got to somewhere around page 100, 107, somewhere around there. I quit. I said, I can't understand this. I'm not ready for it. I was teaching in Morehouse. I said, I can't understand, this the way it needs to be understood. The next summer, I took the summer off. That was the first summer I took off from teaching classes. And I did nothing for, 3 weeks? But eat, sleep, and study that book. Highlight, index card, everything. I told her I had my lenses corrected. She didn't say, most of what she said, but it was the way that she explained it. And there are so many, so what? I can't think of names of them now. There are so many books about, Walter Rodney's How Europe Underdeveloped Africa, Chinwezu's poem on the rage or the anger of the ancestors. And I'm not advocating Chinwezu, because the sisters took a copy of Homosexuality and the Feminization of African Males. And she was a faculty at Morris Brown. She took it over to Africa on one of her trips, and she presented a copy of it to Chinwezu. And Chinwezu said, it doesn't make a difference where a man places his penis.
Oh, wow.
That's what he told her, those exact words. I said, well, he can send the book, back. Doesn't make sense for him to send it. But it's like what he's written is important, it's powerful. Yikwe Armor's 2,000 Seasons.
I still can't.
That book is that 2,000 Seasons, Yikwe Armor's 2,000 Seasons, and Octavia Butler's Parable of the Sword. Those are my two most favorite fiction books. And even the Parable of the Sword doesn't deal with what you're asking, but it's a good thinking book, especially for young folks in terms of being able to forecast and project into the future based upon what's going on now and what has been going on. But Yikwe Armor's 2,000 Seasons, if I had to construct a list of books that warriors need to read, that would be in the top 10. Ramani's YURUGU would be in the top 10. And maybe I don't need to be looking through books. I should know. Wow. Ariel Roberson, Kofi Adays, the Ma'afa and Beyond. That's one of those introductory, but not so introductory books to what has happened to us,
Right.
What we need to do about it.
Right.
Now you made me curious. So let me quickly look in the reading list in the Safo. Kwame Ajakoto's Nation Building.
I got that right here, Bob. I got it right here by me.
Extremely important. Vincent Harding, There Is a River. Stolen Legacy.
Mm-hmm.
And these are nice books. Frances Cress Welsing, of course, her ISIS papers. Chancellor Williams' Destruction of Black Civilization. Everything by Amos Wilson. I started out with his Falsification of African Consciousness. Had as required reading at Morehouse. That was one of the things that upset some people.
I'm doing his blueprint right now, Bob. I'm doing his blueprint like you did YURUGU. I'm not. When we was at the Haitian event and I was doing the thing, I was sitting there reading, and Andre said, Andre came and sat by me. He said, "Man, you really digging in this book." So he called me the next morning. He said, "Yo," he holds his book up. He said, "Man, he said, man, I got to dig in and catch up." But
yeah, me too.
He expands your mind beyond somewhere. It's just like.
And I love books like his, where I'm reading somebody who is African and they're making me slow down.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
You slow down and think about it and find examples in your head and see how it can be applied. That man was brilliant. And he did what he talked about. Now, of course, you don't agree with everything. His definition of influence is different than mine. But I understood exactly what he was saying. I understood why he was saying it. He's a profound thinker. No, not Visions for Black Men. There's a whole host. I was telling a brother the other day, he was looking at the library in the house, walking down the hallway, looking at the library in the house. And he said, "You read all of these?" And I said, "Yeah, most of them, some of them are reference books, but I don't need to read the whole thing." He said, "Wow, this is a lot of books." And I wasn't trying to brag, but I said, I have read more books that are on these shelves. And most of the books that I've read are not on these shelves because they were in libraries and other places and books that, you can't buy anymore. Right. So the reading part is extremely critical, and all of the evidence about what they have done to us is spread out so far and so wide. There might be one sentence in one book or two books. Drusilla Houston's Criminalizing a Race. She's only talking about the incarceration of Black people during the time of our enslavement in the North. But you can understand, just like in what were you talking about, Obasi? What was the first book you were talking about?
The Feminization?
No, there was a book by somebody else you were talking about. The first book you were talking about by somebody else.
Medical Apartheid.
Yes. we know that was the tip of the iceberg. That's what has helped me to understand things, that what they have done is beyond our imagination. That's why most of us stop short even just touching it. That's why most folks, when they look in my family, when they look at a book that belongs, that I wrote, you send your family members because you're supposed to do that, blah, blah, blah. They will take that book and they'll look to see if you've written anything inside the cover to them. They'll close that book up and they'll put it on the shelf. They won't touch it because they're afraid of what they will see. Mm-hmm. They're afraid of that. It'll somehow make them do something to cause lose their security. Mm-hmm. But I know from reading these things, this is the tip of the iceberg. Mm-hmm. Okay. Going to Runoko Rashidi's site and reading what happened to the Tasmanians and the Australians and the people in New Zealand, what they did to these people. Sitting down and looking at how many indigenous people on the island of Haiti were murdered by settlers, and making the students calculate how many that was per day. Mm-hmm. That's when you start to get a picture. When you do the math, the simple math, it may take some time because I'm not a math person. That's any of y'all's area of expertise. But when I sit down and do the math, I really get to understand, you're killing like 1,000 some people per day on this island. For like 30 years, you're doing this every day. What kind of a mind can do that? What kind of a cultural mind, what kind of a cultural mentality could make sense out of cutting off the husband's head and putting a rope through it and tying that head around the neck of the wife while you rape her, and then drag her off to your home and tie her there till she dies, however many times you rape. Conceiving of raping somebody to death. That's a mentality, and it's not limited to one. They want to make us think it's one or two or three bad people or bad apples, what have you. But as we become more acculturated, subintegrated into them, then this is going to be us. This is going to be us. Homosexuality is an act of domination politically. Mm-hmm. I control whoever's under me. Mm-hmm. Even in Greek society, you could not be a member of the military if you were the submissive. You couldn't. They knew. The Roman society, they had it codified in the books, in the law books. You couldn't become a member. You couldn't come into the military. You couldn't join the military if that was what you did, if that was you. They know. They look at it as everything in European society in that cultural mind is about control, domination. Sadomasochism. That's what it's all about. That's what it's all about. Everywhere you look, you see the same thing. The Europeans talking to you, then they're trying to find a way in that conversation to dominate you. Simple conversation. How's your mom? Not that I would ask him anything, but how's your mom? It turns into a conversation about who's going to control the conversation. Who's going to control what? And now we're doing this, and we didn't do this before. We didn't do this before. And we talked, I would argue maybe more than them, because we talked to each other. But the conversations didn't center around that. That's a cultural mentality that leads you to constantly look everywhere for a threat. Look everywhere for a victim. Look everywhere to make everybody believe that victim asked for whatever it was that was done to them. To be Bobby E. Wright, psychopathic racial personality, more importantly, his essay on menticide, where what the characteristics of Europeans, okay, they cannot accept that what they did is wrong. Now they can apologize, but that's political. They can even give you a little change. We think the hacker was talking about 2 days. He give you a little bit of change. But as long as that little bit of change doesn't affect their position of financial power over you, they're good. So everything that they do is geared toward domination. Mm-hmm. Even this interracial stuff, which Chancellor Williams talked about, destruction by civilization, John Ray Clark talked about, where the goal was not right now, the goal is also to steal the melanin.
Yeah.
But at heart, it's about creating that buffer class to protect them from us. So when we turn, I remember when the quote unquote riots, the rebellions broke out in DC after they killed Martin. And I disagree. I'm not a fan of Martin. I'm a fan of Malcolm. I know how Martin fit in with the South. I'm not from the South. That's not where I live. So I had a mentality, and I've seen that mentality down here among a lot of us. Fear, but when the rebellions broke out in DC and you saw the fire and the fire trucks and the National Guard was brought in, blah, 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 what they had done, the circle around the city and all the stores in the city at that time were owned by European Jews. They cordoned off around the city and they allowed the black folks to tear up the European Jews stuff, but they didn't get anywhere near the white folks. The Jews were their buffer class. The Jews were the group that the angered masses, black masses, attacked. And then they could be stopped before they get to the white folks. Now, as in Azania, South Africa, as all over, now you're having the creation, and we're participating in the creation of a collection of mulattoes who will serve as a buffer class between us and them. That's historical fact. That's what they've always done. Everywhere they went. The first objective, rape the women, produce a mulatto class that will be loyal to us, that will be loyal to the father. And it works. It works like a charm every time. And so even there, all this love between the races, no, you create a buffer class. It was an interesting study. So I want to see when this is going to slow down. There was an interesting study that looked at integration of neighborhoods. And it found that whenever the percent of blacks in that community grew to 7%, it didn't make a difference whether you're talking about upper class, middle class, or lower class. Whenever the percent of blacks, it was either 5 or 7%, got to, I'll say 7%, then white flight occurred. Whenever they reach that point. So it's just like with this interracial stuff, it's going to, I would argue, and I believe it's going to stop at a certain point. Because that buffer class is going to get too big. It's going to get too big. At least that group of the upper, buffer class is going to have some managerial power. You know, they don't care about white trash. They're very happy when you have some fool taking care of their daughter. You know, they're pleased, then they don't have to be bothered with it. We should go back in history in terms of that difference between a dowry in European society and a bride's price in traditional African society. The value of the women. That's a cultural mentality. It's not just, you know, cultural politics, or this is where we are right now, or because men felt at one point in time they were superior. There was a cultural mentality that caused that to happen, that led to that. This is a white female who said, I argue she said it the best as an academician. She said, culture is a defense mechanism. It protects the interests of those who it's a creation of. And I hear these young upstarts who want to say that, you know, everything is everything and it doesn't make a difference and Africa is whatever, saying that, you know, capitalism has always existed among all people. No, capitalism hasn't existed among all people. Capitalism is a function of the European personality. It's the creation of the European personality. They created an economy that fit their personality, just like Africans created an economy that fit their personality. But that uncovering, that study of culture is so large. It's huge. I mean, I don't even know how much of it I scratched. And culture was one of my concentrations in grad school. I don't even know how, you know, I've begun to scratch that in terms of the evidence of the culture being a product of the people, being a product of their minds, being a product of their interpretation of reality, being a product of their interpretation of their creation and the creator. All that's a function of how they see each other, how they see themselves. Even Diop's two cradles theory doesn't explain it well enough. I'm pretty much subscriber to the Cro-Magnon model where they ain't human. You want to say lizards, you want to say whatever, I don't care, they ain't human. However you want to define it, I'm good.
Right.
You know, they're not.
Right.
And our ancestors, they didn't necessarily understand Europeans, but their Asili, their culture themselves, they themselves understood the importance of human being an existence where you weren't born human, you had to earn that. But European culture has them because they need to validate themselves and have everybody believe that they are correct in their behavior or they made a boo-boo. So they have described you being human from birth, which allows them in all of their atrocities to all be human, to all fit into that category. If they define being human as our ancestors did, the vast majority of them would not fit into the category of human, just in terms of cultural definitions. They wouldn't fit into the category of being human.
Nope.
Right.
And that's why they can't allow spirit into their science. That's why they can't allow African definitions to come in, because once they do, then they are identified for what they are. They are identified for what they have done. So they must control the definitions.
Yes, sir.
That's facts with text. Wow. Not a lot of people want to recognize that. That's taboo to think.
Mm-hmm.
White people aren't human. You don't really break that down for the world.
Mm-hmm.
When their God is white.
Yeah, yes.
The white man is God to most of us.
Right.
So that convo is going to bring war. You bring that out.
Yeah. And most of us aren't ready for that.
We got to bring it out, though.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yes, sir.
I don't want to die a liar.
Me neither.
Yeah. That's one of the motivating forces. Long before I met Inia, but she's very honest in terms of what has happened to us and what's going on with us. And I swore to myself, even before I realized that I wanted to become a teacher, I said, I'm not going to lie to my students. I'm not going to lie to my students. I don't want anybody coming to me 30 years from now saying, you didn't tell us the truth. You didn't tell us the whole truth. You didn't tell us, I can die with that. I can die with having been as honest based upon everything that I knew. People who are trying to trust what you say, and you're lying to them, that sets something in motion that lasts for generations.
Yeah. That could void the whole discussion. They'll just think everything is off then.
Mm-hmm.
But you're going to be reverenced for telling the truth 30 years from now, 50 years from now. That's what I think.
30 years from now, Baba, some young warrior will find a copy of Asafo and it will start up again.
Good. And I'm of course, ego's not in play, but that's not the dream. Or that's what do you say? One of the perks of being honest, of being African.
Yes,
You don't know when it's going to come or where, and you're probably not going to be around. But I want very much. That's what do I want? I want people to see a warrior. I want people to see someone who's not a liar. I want people to see someone who have no problem with going to war with the nation by himself, or if anybody else was in the movement or whatever. That's good. I don't want to die a punk.
Me neither.
To me, that's the fundamental definition of manhood. I don't want my grandchildren to hang their heads in shame, not because I'm saying something that embarrasses them in front of white folks, but to hang their head in shame because I ran away from an honest fight. And my father used to say, he said, well, if there's a bully at school, and there was only one, but he wasn't messing with me. If there's a bully at school and he's bigger than you, what have you? He said, you don't run. He said, you tear them kneecaps up. Let him know that you were there. You tear them kneecaps up. So YURUGU knows, and it's not a point of pride for me, but YURUGU knows I'm here.
Right.
It's more important to me that the ancestors know that I'm here.
Right.
But I'm not playing with YURUGU. Takes me out tonight, takes me out tomorrow, blah, blah, blah. I have done my work, and I'm not, I'm going to keep on doing it until I'm gone. But to me, when I finished writing the Homo book, I had done my work. I completed my work. As my woman said, that was your dissertation. I've done my work. Everything that came after that was if you will, icing on the cake, points of clarification.
Yeah, and that's why, I kind of kept, making reference to that, because out of all your works, to me, that's one that doesn't get highlighted enough and doesn't get talked about, more, maybe because it's probably, let's say, that one, and To Educate the People is pretty big too. But that one is very important, especially in today. And we'll have also Baba Olatunji, who you wrote the one for his book in, and that's my dude right there. But definitely those two books, I call yours the beat 'em up book. And whenever I would be about to engage in war, I had that book right there, and I'm undefeated. If you shut up long enough and get this work, they're gonna get it.
Olatunji don't play.
He don't.
he don't play. He's one of those seasoned warriors who's constantly on it. And that's his lane. The way he does it, that's his lane. But I honor him for that because he's good at it.
Yes.
He's better than good at it.
Yes.
He's exceptional at doing that. So when you leave, you can't say that you won. I don't care how many quote unquote facts you thought you threw out.
Yes. No, Bobby, he calls me and wakes me up early in the morning.
I believe it.
He says, Obasi, you got to wake up and see what I emailed you. Wait, it's like 8:30. But
yeah. He's one of our premier fighters.
Yes, he is.
He's one of our premier fighters. And we have, a number who are like him, but you don't really, they're trench workers. They're the original grassroots type, where a lot of their work is finding minds that are courageous enough and intelligent enough to consider what they say and to take it in its natural course, because they're not there to spoon feed. They're there to get you irritated, get you going to a point where you go and study it for yourself and then prove that they're right in the process. We have some extremely well-read warriors out here, extremely well-read, warriors who are very dedicated, but they can't. It's like they have to pick a point to focus on, or you're not going to get any rest and you'll get pulled in so many directions that it's going to kill you. I've seen that happen as well.
And that battle fatigue, which you talked about.
Yes. That's real.
Yes.
That's real. I've had to stop a few times, and that funk takes over, and it's like everything is wrong. Everything is wrong. And it takes a lot. I believe it takes a lot of years for you to get to a point where you can manage that well, and you have every right to be upset. Because you look around and you see that chaos being introduced by people who don't know what they're talking about. It had this huge following, and you're like, how can all these people follow this moron?
Exactly. Exactly.
How can they do that?
Exactly.
Is he that good? Is he that eloquent? Can he talk that sweet? It's like, for me, Umar, and I talk to warriors about this. And I don't listen to anything he says, but it's like I stopped even paying any attention. The first time I met him, my mind said no. I met him in Philadelphia for the Nat Turner conference. And my mind said trickster. And I didn't know him. This is the first time I'd met him. The next time I met him, he was here at Morris Brown for I was doing a lecture there. He was doing a lecture there as part of a program. And after the program was over, he does, I'm like, call you. I'm not thinking this homo thing, but I'm like, who are you for me to call first and foremost? Then the thing that topped it off for me was give me $20,000 and I'll have you one of the best African center schools in the country.
Yeah, to see it.
In a few short months. I know money to some degree, and I know that money that he has, if he had invested it correctly, he'd have triple that amount by now. Huh? Oh, I could do it with 20. I mean, 250, any of y'all trying to get more money. If you give me 250 million, no, I was talking about me. I said if I had 20,000. Okay, I'm not gonna argue with that. Give me 250.
Yes,
but I know what it takes to start a school. I know many people who have their own schools, and all of us understand the game. Imagine what would have happened to me if I had collected $250,000 from Black folks. How long would it have taken them to haul me off to prison?
About 2 months.
Yeah. Build up a little case and then come. But this man has had this money for all this time, and still getting more. Hasn't done anything. Keeps, and it's just constant. It's frustrating to me that we can be so gullible and then continue to back someone.
Yes.
I would if I could invest that, you give me that in this period of time, I'd have a few million in my pocket. And then when I say, oh, well, I can't start the school, here's your 250,000 back.
Yeah. But that's because we are serious one. And Baba Oshi will tell you this. He and I got into it on Baba Oshi's program. Because of the way he was talking to the people. And you know how I am, Baba. I'm not with that. And the level of disrespect, and like you said, and it's refreshing to hear from you, because a lot of times people just think I'm just this angry person that got a problem with everything. Yeah, I got a problem with you hustling my people, and I know, because I haven't done it to the level of you, but I also know what it takes and how you have to work hard when you educate people.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And even, I mean, it doesn't. To me, it doesn't make a level. Common sense. You could probably, if you had 200,000 right now, by the end of the week, you'd have all your teachers.
I would.
Or you need to decide on whose house it's going to be in, and it'd be a done deal. And you'd have full enrollment in 3 weeks. So I don't understand why. And I understand, Negroes want to be patient and blah, blah, blah. And of course, Negroes do that to each other. So that's not something that they're tripping. And in fact, many of them are probably applauding because they figure that most of the money is coming from the quote unquote conscious community, which they want to rip off anyway. But I don't understand the support for this and the continuing funds. As I said, if I had done this, if I had been able to accumulate on a humbug this kind of money, I'd have been in prison, and I probably wouldn't have had a trial yet. They just sit me in there, and no one would say anything.
Yeah, under the jail.
Yes, absolutely. So to me, he's like, I guess now the premier. Well, we got a lot of little hustlers around, but he's done it exceptionally well. He's done exceptionally well. And there's a point at which I can't feel sorry for us.
Right.
Supporting him.
Right.
Yeah, gullible. Right. Could you break down, could you tell us about your school?
Oh, Akabin Institute is Eniya's dream. This is Eniya's baby. And that's why I have to tell people straight, because they think it's mine because they know my name. Most don't know her name. But this is her baby. This is a dream that she's had since she was, young. I didn't, not to be funny, but I didn't really have a dream. I'm just, moving along my course, what have you. But this one made sense to me when Morehouse paid me the first year for not being there. I was going to be home working on my dissertation, and our daughter was the school that she was at, which was an independent Black institution. They decided not to have a high school because they didn't have enough students for high school to justify having a high school, so they stopped having a high school. So I was going to homeschool her, and then the classmates that she had who was supposed to be going to high school, they called. That started Akabin. And we had studied other African-centered institutions in terms of what worked and what didn't work because she wanted to start a school. So I don't know, maybe we were better prepared than many because we had been looking at this, but it wasn't in the plans. Some things just fall into, like we were hoping, as I would say, we were hoping that, this money would fall into our lap and then we could establish it. Of course, I didn't have the eloquence of Umar, so the money wasn't coming in that way. But when it happened, that sense of community really kicked in. The only thing that I had written before Akabin started was the chess primer, and it was in this 8.5 by 11 thing that I had ran off copies of at Kinko's. When Akabin started, and I think this is a very important lesson because we often don't stop and sit back and think, okay, well, how can I make this happen? Because it's going to happen no matter what. When we left Morehouse and she left Morehouse a year later, our income was cut in half, but the bills didn't change. And so we're gonna do this. So I sat, and honestly, I was a primary teacher. I sat and I tried to figure out what it was that I did well that could bring in, some money. And there were two things that I can do, and I get lost in them. One of them is chess, and the other is writing. So at that point in time, the questions began to come in that needed to be answered, which led to the writing of excuses, and Negroes and Other Essays. And then the books just flowed. They flowed. And one year we had, and Indiana and I differ on this one. I argued that we had one full-time student, maybe some part-time students. She said, I believe we had like 3 full-time students. We needed at least 12 students in order just to make basics, get handled. But the book sales that year compensated, made the difference from the tuition that didn't come in. And those are those things, spiritual crises, that make you recognize the ancestors are there. They're taking care of business. You're the one that's in doubt. They're not in doubt. You're the one that's in doubt.
They waiting on you.
Yes, you said it. They're waiting on you so they can do some work.
That's powerful.
So this is our 22nd year. 23rd? Listen to my conversation. This is our 23rd year of operation. From virtually the beginning, though, I've done classes here, courses here for adults, for families, go out and lecture and do classes at other places. Now it's evolved into a lot of online stuff, which I'm loving. You don't realize the value because you're caught so much in the if you will 9 to 5 of teaching the students, and you're too tired when you get finished with that to go and teach this course. But now it's different because you don't have to. There are things that you don't have to do. Okay, I don't have to supervise. I'm the disciplinarian. I don't have to do that. So that's a lot of energy that I don't have to expend on these children, which of course it needs to be spent on. It needs to be used on them, but I don't have to do that anymore. So that I found that energy is usable in other ways that involve education. I'm hoping that the model that we have set, which isn't the only model of this, is just a local one, where people are African-centered without compromise, because the majority of quote-unquote African-centered schools in the city of Atlanta are fully compromised. The largest one is promoting homosexuality. I want this to serve as a model for what was in DC when I grew up. They had that communiversity thing, school without walls. And, you know, you had classes in people's homes and people in the community who knew stuff, or faculty who lived in the community. They would have classes and courses, what have you, in their homes and in stores and stuff like that. That's what needs to be brought back. We validate ourselves.
Right.
We have our own economy, so I don't have to worry about going to work for you. I have to worry about the children who, you know, we brought up to be African to go work for you and have to change their politics in order to work for you. Well, we validate ourselves. So if my child, like one of the sons in the community now, this boy doesn't want to go work for YURUGU. He wants to work for himself, and he wants to be African. So what does he do? He's gotten courses at Atlanta Metro on cabinet making, floor laying. He's here doing plastering on sheetrock. You know, he's getting skills from the different people in the community who are doing the different things so that he can establish his own. So he won't have to leave to go get money from somebody else. He won't have to go beg. He won't have to compromise being African. Unless he chose to, but he doesn't have to because he's got the skill. That's what we need to have.
Right.
It was so sad for me. There's a cobbler. I didn't even know that's what their name was. A cobbler, a shoemaker in Atlanta, Georgia, a black one. He's getting old now. But he offered I believe it was a 6 or 8 week summer course for free for Black children only to learn how to make shoes. He wanted to pass it. No one came. That was like really, really sad to me. Because he was trying to do, you know, what we've been telling people to do.
Yeah.
And no one came. I guess shoemaking is something, you know, for, you know, lower class folks or what have you in terms of the labor market.
Tell Nike that.
Yeah, yes, yes, yes.
Yeah.
Stacey Adams or any one of them.
Any one of them. You know, there's a brother here. Another sad story. This I'll say bougie mentality.
Yeah.
He makes underwear. You know, and the first time that he did that, I smiled because it's like a brother making underwear. You know, that was in a way that was funny to me the first time. He understood because he had seen that smile so many times before.
Yeah.
He said, "Yeah, I make underwear." He was showing me this. I'm saying, "Oh wow, this guy makes underwear." This guy makes underwear. He knows what he's doing.
Right.
And he made me think about Jerry Clark and said, you know, everything that we need in the community, we need to make.
Right.
We will forever be dependent upon this freak.
That's a fact.
So it's like that's like you know, we don't have a lot of money. You know, we left that. And you know, nobody's paying, you know, out of arm and, you know, everywhere to have their child educated from an African-centered perspective. And we understand that because we're eating, we get around where we need to go. I get whatever I need to get, you know, the basic stuff. But the idea of this as a possibility isn't something that most people would think about in education because they don't see it as profitable. But to me, this is where the profit is in the children. That's the profit.
Yes, sir.
What is it? Untitled Chapter, he who teaches speaks to the future.
Okay.
I'm worried about 7 generations down the road. I'm not worried about now. I know I'm going to eat. You know, I know I have a place to lay my head.
Right.
So I can't worry about stuff like that. But people need to understand that tends to come with this model because you are dedicating yourself to, you know, the liberation, empowerment, and sovereignty of African people. And nothing is more important than that.
Nope.
But you're not here to aspire to poverty. You got to make it like everybody else.
Yeah.
Thankfully for us, and I think it has a lot to do with how long we've been here, you know, having been ex-college, having been college professors, all the rest of that. People think that you're smarter than you are, which, you know, that works to your favor sometimes. So the support from the community has been wonderful over this time. I don't know how many books people have brought by. We have a neighbor who brought by a set of Black encyclopedias. She brought by a first edition hardback of Richard Wright's Native Son. You know, that book could go on the market for a few thousand. You know, and all the things that we get, you know, we have one brother, he's sending jump ropes, footballs, baseballs, everything, staplers, paper, him and his wife sending, you know, everything that they could think that we need. The computer that got me started on this computer was one that was brought to us, brand new. Because the daughter, I'm up there editing a book, and she's come out of class, and she said, "Baba, that's what you edit on?" She started laughing. I said, "Oh, you laughing at my computer?" I said, "No, you can't." And like 2 days later, they're bringing the computer NEI's on. The TVs that we watch, these weren't things that we bought. You know, most of the clothes I wear, I didn't pay for them. You know, so we have a lot of the food that we eat. We didn't go to the grocery store and get. Of course, we get most of our food, blah blah blah. But there are so many things here. I can take you on a tour around this house. Virtually all the chairs, virtually all of the tables.
You're protected because you protect.
Right.
We appreciate that.
That's right.
We definitely, it was not expected. And it's always a pleasant surprise when people can read. You know, that's love.
My team, we're going to support soon. I don't want to make no promises, but we will be supporting.
We had it two different ways. We had a brother who was, I believe he lived in Cleveland. He was sending money every month so that his son could attend Akabin in 3 years. His son was like too young. I think his son was like 2 years old or something like that. And he's sending money every month to make sure Akabin Institute. I don't know what happened to him, because I guess about maybe a year ago, it stopped coming and he stopped communicating. So I'm assuming that something either happened to him or, a situation, because he was serious. And then, we have folks who, we met 20 years ago, and they weren't in a position to assist in the way that they wanted to. And then 20 years later, they're starting to send this or to advertise that or what have you. So we don't, the time frame is irrelevant. It's the heart.
Right.
Virtually every T-shirt that you see me in was a gift. Virtually every T-shirt you see me in was a gift. The K-Buka T-shirts, like we had those made.
Yeah, right.
But virtually every T-shirt that you see us in, we didn't buy. We didn't buy. We had too many T-shirts to wear. But we're holding on to them. So as these older ones wear out, we can put on the the new ones. And that's appreciated. That's definitely appreciated. This right here is appreciated. So somebody's listening who will assist in whatever way that they can. Somebody's going to spread the word. Somebody's going to say something. Somebody's going to send love. Going to send strength. Going to send up an affirmation for us. Whatever.
Well, before the show get done, give out your information.
They can. I was going to say, I was looking at my calendar. For those who are radio people, I think I'll be on Baba Oshi's show on the 25th and the when is the other day? The 25th and the 18th. So this coming Monday and next Monday, I'll be on Baba Oshi's show. Yeah, I promised him a while ago, and I've been ignoring him, neglecting him. And I want to make at least two other announcements. Number one, October has become our fundraising month. So I'm posting on my page every day. Assist us in any way that can be assisted. And this is to the community. Also K-Buka, which is my absolute favorite. Oh, I keep saying that, I keep looking at your t-shirt. K-Buka is my favorite lecture. It's always been my favorite lecture. That's on the 20th of November. I believe it's 20th. Yeah, it's the 20th of November. And folks, that to me is an extremely important lecture. My marimba is at almost every one of them, sitting in the front, or she doesn't do the computer thing, and it's going to be online this time. It's going to be virtual this time, like last time. But it's an extremely important lecture. It's the most important lecture I do every year. It's the very most important lecture I do every year.
I can tell you I miss coming to the actual You know, because you know, me and Shelly used to come to all of them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I miss the community. Are you all there? And
Right.
I miss the children doing their thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really miss that. So as soon as this mess clears up a little bit and we can really do it the way we want to do it, then we're going to do it again. That's not going to stop. And that, like other things, I hope that people take and do themselves. A sister who was like at the second one, I believe that we did, she went to her family reunion and asked, you know, the family's permission to take the children and show them and do. She taught them how to do the positions, and she did the lecture. And everybody loved it. And I said, that's what it's supposed to be. I'm not supposed to be the only voice, you know, with this, or only one or a few voices with this. But folks can find me on Facebook, either in Mwalimu Baruti or Baba and Mwalimu Baruti is the one that you have a better chance of accessing me through, because there are no limits on the number of people. I already have 5,000 friends on Mwalimu Baruti. Plus on Baba and Mwalimu Baruti, whether you're a friend, I don't have any friends there. You can always email me, message me there, or, you know, just say something on one of the posts or what have you. I'll see it there. So I always tell folks either Baba and Mwalimu Baruti or the Akabin Institute page. Of course, folks can email me. I do much better on emails. Any other is better on the phone, but I do much better on emails, and they can email me at mwalimubaruti@yahoo.com. First and last name @yahoo.com. No space anywhere. And of course, our site, which is where all of my books are and all of the DVDs are, that's www.akabenhouse, AKOBENHOUSE, AKOBENHOUSE.com. Of course, the books are also on Amazon, but we prefer people to get them from us because Amazon takes its cut. So those are the main. And folks can also reach out to Inia on Facebook.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, she will also respond. But that's, you know, that's really the main ways. Coming out lecturing. I know I have, I'm sitting looking at this. I have a lecture on this Saturday at 6:30 to 9:30 at the Black Dot, right in the middle of the board, right there, Black Dot. Yeah.
Salute.
Yeah, so I'm going to be doing a lecture then on Francis Cress Welsing.
Oh, okay.
Who is not honored well enough, anywhere near well enough.
Right.
Yeah.
So, Baba Baruti, I'm still going. I haven't got to it yet, but I'm still gonna put together that Warriors Zoom conference. We'll put it together and then ask you what day you are available. We'll put it together.
I'm looking forward to that, just like I look forward to this.
That's right.
You know, talking to the Warriors.
One question I got before we go is it's a Francis Cress Welsing question. Okay. Is this whole dynamic really linked to genetic annihilation?
I would say that comes out of their fear. That's part of that control thing. They of course recognize that they are the minority and that they are an ugly minority and they are a powerless minority without other people making them powerful. It's just sort of like when a black male tells a white boy that he's cool, suddenly he's really cool.
Yeah.
You know, I think genetic annihilation is part of it. It's part of the Ma'afa. I don't think that they can survive with competition, with any serious competition. I'm not so much into the understanding, and I understand her argument and have no problem with it. I don't necessarily think that it's so much about them being for lack of better words, raped into non-existence, because they're allowing that now because that allows them to slowly but surely incorporate the power of melanin into their genetic structure.
Yes, sir.
So if that was the case, then they found a way around that. But that doesn't negate the fact that they are afraid of being genetically removed from the planet, but they're moving on that very rapidly. What that prevents a lot of us from thinking sometime or realizing sometime is that this interracial interbreeding is serving a political purpose for them, and they're controlling the degree to which it's occurring. They're controlling who is occurring. You're not finding that in the best of their families. You're not finding that in the wealthiest of their families.
Yeah.
And if it is, it's going to be, you know, one of the scrubs in the family, the female scrubs in the family, you know, or what have you. And yeah, we need to turn that word scrubs back to them.
That's right. Right.
But I don't hold on to it to the degree that Frances Cress Welsing did, mainly because it has served their purpose as well, and they're able to control the degree or the extent to which it occurs. Yeah, I think it's a good. I also think it's a good theory. Her theory about where Europeans come from in terms of the white folks being kicked out of Africa, if you will, and them being upset and coming back to destroy. You know, I don't really buy it, but I think it's, you know, anything to me that speaks to their cultural personality. Okay, why they're so angry, what have you. You know, I can pass that on to students. I have my own belief system. You know, I don't even hold on to shake and jokes to cradle theory too much, because there are serious questions for me. One of those questions is, okay, well, if the African cradle, you know, made for people to be black, what did we look like before we, you know, before the sun? What did we look like before we got in the sun? You know, to me, simple questions undermine, you know, they trip up quote unquote science. And then added to that, Diop was sleeping with the enemy, and his widow is honored in the Black anthropological and Egyptology societies like she's a goddess. So she comes to the meetings or what have you, and they have a special chair for her. These Black folks honor her like she's him, if you will. I think his contribution of carbon dating was important. You know, you can tell these folks were Black from way back when, but I'm not really much of a humanist in terms of everybody's human. And Diop's approach, or Diop's approach in his writing, was that. He operated like a lot of our scholars do, like they're above race. You know, race doesn't affect them anymore because, you know, we're just human. And even though Diop did in, I think it was Civilization or Barbarism, I think he did make a point at the beginning about the politics of race, but then you have the rest of the book where you just, you know, talking about humans and all the rest of this stuff.
Yeah, he threw it in.
Yeah. So I'm not, I love Frances Cress Welsing, you know, work. And in fact, I took all of the statements that were of worth about, from her about homosexuality and the feminization of African males, and wrote it's a book. Some people may call it a book, but I call it a book, explaining her stand on, it's titled Power and Sexual Insanity. And that's the degree to which I honor her. In fact, I can't say she's the only person, warrior scholar, who I've written about or did an essay on or a small book on. But there was, when she transitioned, this major attack on her character, on her. I said, no, statements need to be made relative to this, especially to these fags. I ain't got time for this. And me saying that word, of course, lost me some invites and all the rest of this stuff, but I don't care. And I say, it's good enough for my father, it's good enough for me.
Right, right. You
are what you are. And when I was growing up, and I know I'm way past, and I know any of y'all's gonna start giving me a look in a minute, but shoot, I forgot what I was gonna say. Oh, when I was growing up, fag didn't mean homosexual. We as children didn't know what that was.
Yeah.
It just meant like that was the worst kind of punk in the world was a fag.
You're the lower level man.
Yes.
It wasn't even about being a faggot.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, that was it. You were like the lowest of the lowest. You were like the punk of the punk. You were the one who's making all that noise in the background, and I'm facing 5 people, and you got my back, and I turn around, and you've been gone.
Yeah.
You know.
And then when you see him, you be like, "Come on, why you ran? Yo, you a faggot, yo."
Yes.
That's how it sounded. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. We weren't talking about anybody's sexuality. We were talking about your character.
Yeah.
You're straight up punk. Straight up punk. And that's how when I say it because those who I'm talking to like that today, these are feminine males, they're fags to me.
Me too.
You know.
Right.
And not to put down African women, because I know some African women who can seriously throw down. But you fight like a little girl, like a little white girl. You know, hoping that something will land someplace, a little slap will land someplace. That's a fag to me. That's a straight up punk.
I agree.
And if I offend anybody, sorry, but not sorry.
Right.
We'll know that word.
Yeah.
One more thing. Tell the young warriors real quick. More like what a social scientist is, or even why they should try to be one.
Oh, social science.
I loved it when I heard you break it down. As social scientists, I think we're at certain degrees that someone could claim to be that.
Mm-hmm.
But I love the wordplay that describes what we do.
Well, I argue, and I tell them all in a second, whatever the age may be, but especially young folk, you're a social scientist by default. Because you ask questions, you go through the scientific method in your head, you go through it in terms of the answers that you're looking for in your day-to-day life. We're all social scientists. And we get that confused, you know, with folks in laboratories and all the rest of that. You analyze the world. You study history, whether it's in books or what have you, and that allows you to predict, you know, what's coming. Social, society, study of groups. So you do that by default. So we're all social scientists. We might not have the degrees validated by, you know, YURUGU or their institutions, but we're all social scientists. And often people, because they don't have the degrees, they don't think that they can do it that well. Some of the most uncredentialed people I know were better social scientists than I am, because they understood life. They understood how stuff worked. They studied, whether it was seriously or not. They looked at how people behave so they can analyze it. So when you're talking about social science, you're talking about psychology, you're talking about, you know, study of the individual mind, talking about sociology, study of society, talking about anthropology, study of past societies, history. All of these disciplines are all part of the social science.
Yes, sir.
And all of us are social scientists, whether we want to admit it or not. And we need folks to think like social scientists, because social scientists, if they use their intellect correctly, can tell you what's coming. They don't have to necessarily read the newspaper every day, even though I, of course, say that you need to keep up with the news. But they don't have to read the news every day, because they can hear about an issue and they can tell you where it's going. They can tell you the outcome. And 99% of the time, they're going to be correct, because they have studied people. They have studied what's going on.
Yes, sir.
So, whether that's something I advocate all of us. I'm not a big advocate of sociology, which is my discipline. And I have more hours in psychology in undergrad than I do in sociology, because I love psychology. But I really, and that's the area where most of our truth is spoken. Okay, sociology is a big lie. In psychology, Black psychology, you get a lot of understanding, a lot of analysis, a lot of different ways to think, a lot of interpretations, you know, good interpretations from there. So even if you're not a social scientist, I mean, in sociology or any other social, or don't consider yourself to be a social scientist, then you should read Black psychology. And there's lots of Black psychology to read at all kinds of levels. I'm a very big advocate of Black psychology. And you can read it without having the language of that discipline, the quote unquote jargon of that discipline. And it'll help you to understand us and our condition. So reading Bobby E. Wright is reading psychology. Reading Amos Wilson. Amos Wilson is a psychologist by training.
Yes.
Okay. You can't be I can't name anyone who speaks to us in terms of social science who isn't deep into African psychology. I can't. And some of our best thinkers, some of our best names are psychologists, you know, by training and training self. So yes, we have used up an enormous amount of good time. Yep. This was good.
Well, we are honored. Well, let me speak for myself. I'm definitely honored. You could come back anytime. Let Obasi know what you're doing, and we'll definitely try to support.
Okay.
And anytime, any 24 hours, my phone is open.
Right.
Sounds good. And you all are supporting.
That's right. Yeah.
You all are supporting.
Thanks for letting us pick your brain. I learned a lot.
And you know me, Bobby. I don't really have to explain that. You know me.
And that's part of the support, because it keeps me thinking. So, you know, without the questions, without the input, not that I'm empty-minded, but, you know, it gives me, you all give me things to talk to the students about. Stuff that I forgot about or stuff that never occurred to me. Because they get, you know, it's like mother's breast milk. The baby gets what the mother has. The children get what the people I interact with have.
Yeah.
They're supposed to be preparing to be you. So I definitely, it's not one way at all. I can even say it's kind of a selfish two-way.
Selfish two-way. I like that.
Yeah. So we will do this. We will do this again.
That's right.
And I appreciate you all having me on. And on that note, I'll say a BB for Hodier.
BB for Hodier, Baba. We love you, brother. Like a power.
BB for Hodier.
Peace, brothers.
Peace.
Rebel with a cause. BK all day, baby. It's rebel season. The real rebels are back. I got the mind of a king. Should really protect them. Everybody talking, but rebel really the next. I got the mind of a king. Spread to never take this. Slavery, fake hip hop, you dead if you were racist. I got the mind of a king. You could never replace this. Blood from the mud, no love, so I'ma say I got the mind of a king. I know where I am from now. I'ma wake 'em up, you keep 'em sleep, it's up to me. I got the mind of a king.